The Imperial Oasis Casino sparkled like a jeweled crown against the Las Vegas night sky on April 6, 2013, its golden spires and crystal facades reflecting the dreams and desperation of thousands who had come to test their luck against the mathematical certainty that the house always wins. Inside the casino's palatial VIP lounges, billionaires and celebrities pursued their private gambling rituals with the kind of casual extravagance that transformed $100 bills into poker chips and $1 million wagers into evening entertainment. The atmosphere in these exclusive spaces was intoxicating, thick with cigar smoke and French perfume, crackling with the electric tension of enormous fortunes changing hands faster than most people could comprehend. Diamond-studded socialites sipped Dom Perignon, while tech moguls placed bets that exceeded the GDP of small nations, creating a carnival of wealth where money flowed like water and human desires were limited only by the size of offshore bank accounts or the Euroshuri de Wanons. But hidden among the crystal chandeliers and marble columns, invisible servers in crisp black uniforms moved like ghosts through this realm of excess, carrying silver trays laden with champagne, caviar, and something far more valuable than gourmet. Refreshments, envelopes stuffed with cash tips that represented more money than most Americans would see in their lifetimes. At exactly 12:44 a.m., the Imperial Oasis's sophisticated surveillance system captured what appeared to be a routine moment in the endless ballet of luxury hospitality that kept the casino's wealthiest clients satisfied. Security cameras recorded Luis Romero, a veteran waiter with nearly 6 years of impeccable service, carrying a silver service tray toward the high-stakes Baccarat lounge, where foreign royalty and hedge fund managers were engaged in games where individual hands could win or lose more money than most people's houses were worth. Lewis wore the same immaculate uniform he had donned thousands of times before. Crisp white shirt, black bow tie, pressed black slacks that reflected the casino's obsession with perfection in every detail that might catch the attention of guests. Accustomed to service at the world's finest establishments, his movements displayed the practiced efficiency that had made him one of the casino's most trusted servers. Someone who could navigate crowds of intoxicated millionaires while balancing trays worth more than luxury automobiles. 28 minutes later, surveillance footage shows Louis pushing a discreet catering cart loaded with covered silver dishes through service corridors toward the loading dock, where legitimate food deliveries and waste removal occurred around the Euro clock. To any security guard monitoring the feeds, he appeared to be conducting routine catering duties that were so commonplace they attracted no attention from staff trained to watch for obvious criminal behavior and external security threats. What those cameras missed was the greatest theft in Las Vegas hospitality history unfolding beneath their electronic gaze. Hidden under the elegant silver covers and pristine white linens were envelopes containing exactly $19 million in high-roller tips and cash gifts, money that represented the casual generosity of people for whom $100,000 gratuities were expressions of satisfaction with exceptional service rather than life-changing sums that could fund comfortable retirement anywhere on Earth. Luis Romero vanished into the Nevada desert with a fortune that would transform him from invisible service worker to international fugitive, leaving behind only questions that would torment casino executives, FBI investigators, and the ultra-wealthy. Clients whose trust and privacy had been violated by someone they had never bothered to notice despite years of impeccable service. Casinos protect their vaults with steel doors and electronic surveillance, monitor every card and chip with mathematical precision, and track every transaction with computer systems designed to detect the smallest irregularities. But one man discovered that the greatest fortunes often traveled through the casino hidden in plain sight, carried on silver trays by servants who were so invisible to the wealthy elite that they might as well have been ghosts moving through a world of endless luxury and casual extravagance. Before we rewind to reveal how a casino waiter outsmarted the house and walked away with $19 million in untraceable cash, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you're ready for this incredible story, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this case is going to show you how the most audacious heists happen right under everyone's nose. Luis Miguel Romero understood invisibility better than most people understand celebrity. At 29, he had spent nearly 6 years working as a casino waiter at the Imperial Oasis, serving some of the wealthiest and most powerful people on Earth, while earning wages that barely covered his basic living expenses in one of America's most expensive entertainment cities. Born in Guadalajara, Mexico, to a family of restaurant workers who had built their lives around the service industry, Luis had inherited both the physical stamina and emotional intelligence required to excel in hospitality work that demanded perfection under constant pressure. His father, Miguel, had managed restaurants in tourist areas throughout Western Mexico, while his mother, Carmen, worked as a cook in hotels that catered to wealthy American tourists seeking authentic Mexican experiences. Luis excelled in school despite his family's financial limitations, showing particular aptitude for languages and mathematics that his teachers believed could lead to careers in business or international commerce. He was fluent in Spanish, English, and conversational French by age 18, with the kind of cultural awareness that made him valuable to employers seeking staff who could communicate effectively with diverse international clienteles. The economic opportunities that drew Luis to Las Vegas were both practical and desperate. A severe economic downturn in Mexico had eliminated most good jobs in the hospitality sector, while family medical expenses had exhausted the Romero family's modest savings and created debts that threatened to destroy everything they had worked to build over decades of honest labor. Las Vegas in 2007 represented a beacon of hope for young men with Luis's skills and work ethic, particularly in the luxury casino segment that required enormous numbers of service staff to maintain operations that never stopped in standards that exceeded those of the world's finest hotels. The Imperial Oasis, which was preparing to open as the Strip's most exclusive gaming destination, hired Luis after he demonstrated exceptional knowledge of wines, spirits, and fine dining service protocols during their rigorous interview process. Luis was exactly what we were looking for, recalled Jennifer Santos, who served as the Imperial Oasis's dining services supervisor during Luis's early years. He understood that our clients expected service that was both invisible and perfect. He could anticipate needs before they were expressed, handle difficult personalities with diplomatic grace, and maintain absolute discretion about the private activities of people who valued their privacy above everything else. He was completely reliable and utterly professional in every situation. For nearly 6 years, Luis Romero was the perfect employee. He arrived early for every shift, maintained the impeccable appearance standards that the Imperial Oasis demanded, and served some of the world's most demanding clients with a combination of efficiency and invisibility that made him indispensable. During high-stakes events where any service failure could cost the casino millions in lost business. But beneath the professional competence and diplomatic smile, Luis harbored growing resentment about the obscene disparity between the wealth he served daily and his own increasingly precarious financial situation. Every night, he watched clients tip cocktail waitresses amounts that exceeded his monthly salary, while he struggled to make rent payments on his studio apartment and send modest remittances to his family in Mexico. The psychological burden of serving people who casually spent more money in single evenings than he would earn in his entire lifetime created a slow-burning anger that Luis carefully concealed behind his professional demeanor. He lived in a converted motel room in a neighborhood where casino workers, restaurant staff, and other service employees existed when they couldn't afford housing anywhere closer to the wealth they served, a daily reminder of the permanent economic gulf that separated the servers from the served. By 2012, Luis had accumulated over $60,000 in credit card debt and personal loans while working overtime whenever possible to cover his family's medical expenses and his own mounting financial obligations. Despite his exceptional performance reviews and the trust placed in him by casino management, his wages remained barely above minimum wage levels that reflected the industry's assumption that service staff would supplement their income through tips from grateful clients. But the tips that Luis received were modest compared to the astronomical gratuities that high-roller clients distributed among themselves, their companions, and the VIP hosts who managed their casino experiences. Luis watched these transactions nightly, envelopes stuffed with cash that represented more money than he would see in years of dedicated service, handed out with the casual indifference of people for whom such amounts were pocket change rather than life-changing sums. Working in the Imperial Oasis's VIP lounges provided Luis with unprecedented access to a secret economy where vast amounts of untraceable cash flowed between ultra-wealthy clients, casino executives, and the exclusive service providers who maintained The privacy and discretion that made high-stakes gambling possible for people whose activities could influence stock markets, international politics, and global financial systems. The Imperial Oasis catered to a clientele that included foreign heads of state conducting unofficial diplomatic business, technology entrepreneurs avoiding capital gains taxes through complex gambling schemes, entertainment moguls laundering income through seemingly legitimate gaming activities, and organized crime figures who used high-stakes gambling to convert illegal proceeds into apparently legal winnings that could be deposited in legitimate banking systems. These clients required service that went far beyond normal hospitality standards. They needed absolute privacy for conversations that could affect international relations, complete discretion about financial transactions that might violate tax laws or securities regulations, and seamless coordination of activities that required the casino to function as a combination private club, diplomatic venue, and informal bank where enormous amounts of currency could be moved without attracting unwanted attention from regulatory authorities. The tipping culture in these VIP environments operated according to rules that bore no relationship to normal service industry practices. Clients routinely distributed gratuities worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to express satisfaction with exceptional service, to ensure continued discretion about sensitive activities, or simply to demonstrate their wealth and power to companions, who were impressed by displays of casual extravagance. Most significantly for Luis's eventual theft, these tips were often collected and temporarily stored by VIP hosts who managed the complex logistics of serving clients whose needs could change rapidly and whose privacy requirements meant that large amounts of cash needed to be available instantly without creating obvious paper trails that might attract scrutiny from tax authorities or law enforcement agencies. The VIP tipping system was designed for convenience and discretion rather than security, explained casino consultant Dr. Michael Rodriguez, who analyzed the Imperial Oasis theft for insurance investigators. High-roller clients wanted to be able to distribute large cash gifts without dealing with banking procedures or documentation requirements. The system worked because everyone trusted everyone else, and because the amounts involved seemed too large and too visible to be attractive targets for employees who would obviously be suspected if anything went missing. Luis discovered that this trust-based system contained vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone who understood its operation and had legitimate access to the areas where cash was temporarily stored. Tips were often collected in envelopes and placed on service trays, while VIP hosts attended to other aspects of client entertainment, creating brief windows when enormous amounts of currency were essentially unguarded and unmonitored. The surveillance systems that monitored VIP lounges were positioned to observe client activities and detect cheating or disputes at gaming tables, but they provided less comprehensive coverage of service areas where staff handled the logistics of luxury hospitality. The assumption seemed to be that employees who had been thoroughly screened and had demonstrated years of trustworthy service could be trusted to handle valuable materials without requiring the same level of monitoring applied to customer-facing activities. Luis spent the better part of 2012 and early 2013 conducting what amounted to a comprehensive intelligence operation against the tipping system he was hired to help maintain, studying cash handling procedures, security vulnerabilities, and the behavioral patterns of clients and staff that governed when large amounts of money would be most accessible to someone with legitimate reasons to be present in VIP areas. The research began with simple observation of how tips flowed through the casino's VIP entertainment system. Luis learned which clients were most generous with their gratuities, which events generated the largest cash distributions, and most importantly, which procedural gaps existed between when tips were distributed and when they were secured in counting. Rooms are transferred to recipients who might not be immediately available to receive them. Luis discovered that major sporting events, particularly championship boxing matches and high-profile UFC fights, created peak tipping periods when wealthy clients celebrated victories or consoled themselves after losses by distributing unusually large gratuities to everyone who had provided service during their casino visits. These events could generate millions of dollars in tips that needed to be collected, sorted, and distributed among dozens of recipients over periods that could extend for hours after the actual sporting events concluded. The logistical challenges of managing these cash distributions created temporary storage situations where enormous amounts of currency were placed on service trays in catering carts or in other mobile containers, while VIP hosts coordinated with recipients who might be scattered throughout the casino or even in other locations. During busy periods, these temporary storage arrangements could involve millions of dollars that existed in a kind of administrative limbo while staff members worked to complete distributions. Luis also began studying the casino's staff, scheduling, and security patrol patterns, learning which times offered optimal opportunities for unusual activities that might not be immediately noticed by supervisors or security personnel. He volunteered for overtime shifts that allowed him to observe operations during different periods and from different perspectives, gradually building comprehensive knowledge of when and where vulnerabilities might be exploited. The breakthrough insight came when Luis realized that major sporting events created controlled chaos that could provide perfect cover for activities that would normally attract immediate attention. During championship boxing weekends, the casino's VIP areas were packed beyond normal capacity. Staff members were working extended shifts under maximum pressure, and security attention was focused on managing crowds rather than monitoring routine service activities. Luis's plan required equipment and credentials that would allow him to move freely through the casino during periods when his presence might not be expected or easily explained through normal work schedules. The solution involved acquiring duplicate uniforms and identification that could provide cover for activities that extended beyond his official duties while appearing completely legitimate to anyone who might observe his movements. The key breakthrough came when Luis established a relationship with Roberto Martinez, a fellow waiter who was facing his own financial difficulties and was willing to provide assistance in exchange for cash payments that could help cover his mounting gambling debts. Roberto's cooperation allowed Luis to acquire a second uniform and identification badge that could be used to establish alternative explanations for his presence in restricted areas. The arrangement was presented to Roberto as a favor that would help Luis cover extra shifts during busy periods when the casino needed additional staff, but bureaucratic procedures made it difficult to arrange official overtime assignments. Roberto's gambling addiction made him vulnerable to financial incentives, and Luis' reputation for reliability made the request seem completely reasonable rather than part of a criminal plan. Luis also began renting storage space under false names, using cash payments and minimal personal information to establish facilities where he could store equipment and potentially hide stolen money during the immediate aftermath of his planned theft. The storage units were located in different areas around Las Vegas, providing multiple options for temporary concealment while he implemented whatever escape plan he was developing for the post-theft period. Most importantly, Luis began acquiring the technical knowledge that would be necessary to convert large amounts of cash into assets that could be transported or transferred without attracting immediate attention from banking monitoring systems or law enforcement agencies that track suspicious financial transactions. April 6, 2013, represented the convergence of multiple factors that created ideal conditions for the largest hospitality theft in Las Vegas history. The weekend featured a championship boxing match at the MGM Grand between two internationally famous fighters, creating the kind of citywide celebration that brought wealthy spectators from around the world and generated the highest VIP spending levels of the year. The Imperial Oasis had prepared for the event by extending operating hours, increasing staff levels, and arranging special entertainment for clients who were expected to wager enormous amounts on both the fight itself and the various casino games. That would provide additional excitement throughout the weekend. The casino's VIP lounges were booked to capacity with foreign royalty, technology billionaires, entertainment moguls, and other ultra-wealthy individuals who viewed major sporting events as opportunities for both gambling and social networking. Luis had volunteered to work extended shifts throughout the boxing weekend, explaining to supervisors that he needed overtime income to cover family medical expenses in Mexico, a request that was readily approved given his reputation for reliability and the casino's need for experienced staff during their busiest periods. The assignments provided legitimate cover for his presence in VIP areas during the optimal time window for his planned theft. The fight itself created the perfect emotional conditions for exceptional tipping behavior. The controversial decision and dramatic finish generated intense reactions among wealthy spectators who expressed their satisfaction or disappointment through the kind of extravagant gratuities that made boxing weekends legendary among Las Vegas service workers. By midnight on April 6th, VIP hosts were managing tip distributions that exceeded $30 million in cash, the largest single-night accumulation in the casino's history. Weather conditions also favored Luis's plan. April in Las Vegas offered perfect temperatures that encouraged wealthy clients to extend their celebrations into the early morning hours, creating sustained demand for service that would provide cover for unusual staff activities during periods when Luis needed to implement his theft without attracting attention from supervisors focused on customer satisfaction. Luis spent the early evening conducting legitimate waiter duties while making final preparations for his crime. He verified that his duplicate uniform and identification were properly positioned, confirmed that storage facilities were available for temporary concealment of stolen money, and ensured that his planned escape route remained viable despite the increased security presence that always accompanied major sporting events. At exactly 12:27 a.m. on April 7, 2013, Luis Romero began executing the crime that would make him one of the most wanted men in America and create one of the FBI's most sophisticated hospitality theft investigations. Security cameras captured every stage of his plan, but the footage would only reveal the audacity and precision of his operation after it was too late to prevent the largest tip theft in casino history. Luis's legitimate shift was scheduled to end at midnight, but he had arranged to continue working unofficial overtime to help manage the exceptional demand created by boxing weekend celebrations that showed no signs of diminishing despite the late hour. His continued presence in VIP areas was not just accepted, but welcomed by supervisors who were grateful for experienced staff during their busiest night of the year. At 12:27 a.m., Luis entered the high-stakes Baccarat lounge carrying a silver service tray loaded with champagne and caviar for clients who were continuing their celebration despite the conclusion of the main boxing event hours earlier. The lounge contained several groups of wealthy gamblers who were engaged in private games where individual hands could win or lose amounts that exceeded most people's annual salaries. Security footage shows Luis serving clients with his characteristic efficiency and diplomatic charm, but he was also conducting final reconnaissance for his planned theft. VIP hosts were managing the distribution of tips that had accumulated throughout the evening, and enormous amounts of cash were being temporarily stored on service trays and in catering carts while staff coordinated with recipients who were scattered throughout the casino. The breakthrough moment came when Luis observed approximately $19 million in cash-filled envelopes being placed on service trays, while VIP hosts attended to other aspects of client entertainment. The money was awaiting distribution to various recipients, but the complexity of coordinating payments to dozens of individuals during the busy post-fight period had created a temporary bottleneck where vast amounts of currency were essentially unguarded. At 12:44 a.m., Luis implemented the crucial phase of his plan by changing into his duplicate uniform and assuming the identity that would allow him to access the accumulated tips without triggering immediate security attention. The transformation took place in a service area that was not directly monitored by surveillance cameras, and his appearance remained consistent enough that casual observers would assume they were seeing the same employee continuing his duties. Using his alternative identification, Luis approached the service trays containing the accumulated tips and began systematically transferring envelopes to a catering cart that he had positioned nearby. The process required exactly 11 minutes of careful work that had to appear routine to anyone who might observe the activity, while actually constituting the largest hospitality theft in American history. The stolen money was concealed beneath the elegant silver covers and pristine white linens that were standard equipment for luxury catering services. From any external perspective, Luis appeared to be preparing food service for continued client entertainment, rather than stealing millions of dollars in tips that belonged to his fellow employees and service providers throughout the casino. Security cameras recorded Luis's movements throughout the process, but his official uniform and legitimate access made the activity appear to be authorized catering duties rather than criminal theft. Even if security personnel had been monitoring the feeds in real time, they would likely have seen nothing more suspicious than a dedicated employee working late to ensure that wealthy clients received the exceptional service they expected. At 12:55 a.m., Luis began moving his cart toward the loading dock, where he had positioned a rented van that would provide transportation for his escape. The route took him through service corridors that were designed to be invisible to customers, past areas where security monitoring focused on preventing external intrusions rather than detecting internal threats posed by employees with legitimate access and apparently valid reasons for their activities. The transfer of money from the catering cart to his van took less than 3 minutes and occurred in a location that was strategically chosen to avoid direct surveillance while appearing completely normal to anyone who might observe the activity from a distance. Luis had practiced the movements until they became automatic reflexes that could be executed even under the extreme stress of committing a crime that would change his life forever. By 1:03 a.m., Luis was driving through Las Vegas with $19 million in stolen tips, following carefully planned routes that avoided major surveillance checkpoints while blending seamlessly into the traffic of service vehicles, casino, workers, and late-night revelers who were continuing their weekend celebrations throughout the city. Security cameras at the Imperial Oasis continued recording the empty catering cart, the service areas where Luis had changed uniforms, and the loading dock where his van had been parked just minutes earlier. But Luis Romero himself had vanished completely, taking with him a fortune in cash tips and leaving behind only questions that would puzzle investigators for years to come. The Imperial Oasis discovered Luis's theft through the worst possible mechanism: direct complaints from ultra-wealthy clients who expected to receive substantial portions of the missing tips and were not accustomed to having their financial expectations disappointed by service industry failures. The discovery began at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 7th, when VIP hosts attempting to complete tip distributions realized that approximately $19 million in client gratuities had vanished without explanation. Unlike other casino thefts that might be discovered through routine audits or security procedures, Luis's crime was immediately obvious to the people who mattered most to the casino's long-term viability: the wealthy clients whose continued patronage generated hundreds of millions in annual revenue and whose satisfaction was essential for maintaining the Imperial Oasis's reputation as Las Vegas's most exclusive gaming destination. The initial response focused on the assumption that the missing money represented administrative errors rather than actual theft, reflecting the casino's desperate hope that such an enormous loss could be explained by procedural confusion or communication failures rather than criminal activity that would devastate their reputation among clients who value discretion and security above all other considerations. But when systematic searches of all service areas failed to locate the missing currency, casino management faced the horrifying realization that they were dealing with the largest hospitality theft in Las Vegas history. The missing money had been stored in specific envelopes that were now completely absent, indicating deliberate removal by someone who understood the tipping system and had access to areas where the cash was temporarily held. Casino executives immediately implemented emergency procedures designed to minimize the reputational damage that could result from public awareness of the theft. VIP clients were quietly informed that their tip distributions would be delayed due to administrative complications, while emergency funds were allocated to ensure that key recipients would receive their expected payments regardless of the criminal loss. The discovery that Luis was responsible for the theft was absolutely devastating, recalled Casino Security Director Robert Martinez. This wasn't just about money. It was about the trust that our most valuable clients placed in our ability to protect their privacy and manage their financial activities. These were people who could lose millions gambling without concern, but they expected absolute security for their personal transactions and gratuities. Security footage analysis revealed Luis's activities during the early morning hours of April 7th, but the recordings initially appeared to show routine service duties rather than criminal theft. Luis's use of legitimate uniforms and official access credentials had made his activities appear completely normal until investigators realized that the timing of his movements correlated perfectly with the disappearance of the missing tips. The search of Luis's apartment revealed the extent of his preparation for permanent disappearance. The studio had been systematically emptied of personal belongings, important documents, and anything that might have practical value for someone starting a new life elsewhere. Missing items included family photographs, clothing, electronic equipment, and even basic household items that suggested Luis had been planning his departure for weeks or months. Bank records showed that Luis had closed his legitimate accounts and liquidated his modest assets during the days immediately preceding the theft, converting everything to cash to avoid leaving electronic trails that might help investigators track his movements after his disappearance. His final paycheck remained uncollected, and his employee locker had been cleaned out completely. The Federal Bureau of Investigation assumed jurisdiction over the Imperial Oasis theft within hours of its discovery, recognizing both the scale of the crime and its potential impact on Las Vegas's reputation as a secure destination for international high roller gambling. Special Agent Rebecca Chen assembled a task force that included specialists in financial crimes, hospitality fraud, and international fugitive tracking. Experts who understood that they were dealing with one of the most sophisticated service industries, thefts in American history. The investigation immediately confronted unique challenges created by the nature of the stolen property and the clientele who had been victimized. Unlike traditional casino thefts involving chips or currency from gaming tables, Luis had stolen tips that existed in a legal gray area where documentation was deliberately minimal, and recipients often preferred to avoid creating paper trails that might attract attention from tax authorities. The Luis Romero case represented a perfect storm of investigative difficulties, Agent Chen explained. We were dealing with stolen money that was supposed to be distributed to hundreds of recipients, many of whom were reluctant to provide detailed statements about their financial activities. The victims included foreign nationals, celebrities, and business executives who valued privacy above justice and were more concerned about avoiding publicity than recovering their losses. Digital forensics revealed that Luis had been researching topics related to international money transfer systems, offshore banking procedures, and countries with limited extradition treaties for at least 6 months before the theft. His computer browsing history showed particular interest in Central American nations that offered banking privacy and residency programs for foreign investors with substantial cash resources. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Luis had been developing relationships with individuals who might have provided assistance with converting stolen currency into legitimate assets or establishing new identities in foreign countries. While the specific content of these communications remained encrypted, their timing and frequency suggested that Luis had been preparing for his disappearance far longer than anyone had realized. Financial analysis revealed that Luis's family obligations and mounting debts had created the kind of desperate situation that could transform reliable employees into criminal threats. His need to send money to Mexico for family medical expenses, combined with his own accumulating financial obligations, had created psychological pressures that overwhelmed his professional ethics and institutional loyalty. The scale of Luis's theft and the sophistication of his disappearance attracted attention from international law enforcement agencies specializing in tracking fugitives who had fled the United States with substantial assets. The FBI's legal attaché offices in Mexico and Central America were notified about the case and began monitoring their territories for signs of Luis's presence or financial activities that might indicate his current location. Intelligence analysts identified several potential scenarios for Luis's escape and current situation. The most likely involved his return to Mexico, where family connections and cultural familiarity could provide initial refuge, while he arranged for more permanent relocation to countries with limited cooperation with American law enforcement agencies. Mexico's proximity to Las Vegas, combined with Luis's language skills and family relationships, made it an obvious first destination for someone attempting to disappear with large amounts of cash. The money could be hidden or converted into legitimate investments through Mexican banking systems that offered more privacy than American institutions, while Luis's understanding of Mexican culture and business practices would help him avoid the mistakes that often lead to fugitive capture. Alternative theories focused on Central American countries that specialized in providing financial services to wealthy individuals seeking to avoid scrutiny from their home governments. Nations like Belize, Costa Rica, and Panama offered combinations of banking secrecy, real estate investment opportunities, and residency programs that could allow Luis to establish a completely new identity while enjoying his stolen fortune. The most optimistic scenario from Luis's perspective involved his successful integration into expatriate communities in these countries, where $19 million would provide exceptional quality of life while remaining beyond the effective reach of American law enforcement. His service industry background and language skills would help him blend into tourist-oriented economies where his presence would attract no special attention. As the investigation matured, FBI analysts began focusing on the possibility that Luis had received assistance from criminal organizations specializing in money laundering and identity theft services. The complete absence of the stolen money from normal law enforcement detection methods suggested professional criminal support that extended beyond what an individual could arrange independently. Las Vegas had extensive historical connections to organized crime groups that maintained informal relationships with casino employees, particularly in areas involving cash handling and high-value customer service. While regulatory oversight had eliminated most obvious criminal infiltration, these relationships continued to exist and could provide access to services that fugitives required for successful disappearance. The investigation identified several individuals with whom Luis had casual relationships who were suspected of having connections to money laundering networks operating between the United States and Mexico. These relationships had developed naturally through Luis's work environment and social activities in Las Vegas's Latino service worker community, but they could have provided access to criminal services. Converting $19 million in stolen cash requires sophisticated criminal infrastructure that typically operates at international levels, Agent Chen noted. Luis would have needed help from people who understood currency exchange systems, document forgery, international banking regulations, and the various techniques used to disguise the source of illegally obtained funds. The most likely scenario involved Luis using his systematic planning approach to identify and develop relationships with criminal service providers over months before actually committing the theft. His demonstrated patience and attention to detail would have enabled him to research different money laundering options and escape routes with the same thoroughness he applied to studying the casino's tip handling procedures. 10 years after Luis Romero vanished with $19 million in stolen casino tips, he remains one of the FBI's most wanted hospitality criminals and the subject of ongoing international investigation efforts. Despite cooperation with law enforcement agencies throughout the Americas, advanced financial monitoring systems, and substantial rewards for information leading to his capture, Luis has apparently succeeded in disappearing as completely as the wealthy clients he once served. The Luis Romero case represents the evolution of service industry crime in the global economy, Agent Chen observed during a recent case review. We're dealing with criminals who understand both traditional hospitality operations and modern financial systems in ways that create unprecedented challenges for law enforcement. Lewis combined institutional access, cultural knowledge, and international escape preparation at levels that approach professional criminal sophistication. Current investigators continue to monitor international financial markets for transactions that might indicate Luis's presence or activities. Advanced software analyzes real estate purchases, business investments, and banking patterns in dozens of countries, searching for mathematical signatures that might reveal the methodical planning that characterized Luis's original theft. Age progression specialists have created images showing how Luis might appear after 10 years of aging and potential cosmetic surgery designed to alter his appearance. These images are distributed to law enforcement agencies worldwide and used in facial recognition systems that scan surveillance footage from airports, border crossings, and public spaces where he might eventually surface.